Welcome to Scripting Events with Callbacks. Let's take a look at how we can use Python callbacks to change operators inside of our network. Let's use the tab key to open up the op create dialog and add a timer chop to our network. Now, if we take a close look at our timer, we'll see there's a little purple square at the bottom right-hand corner. And if we click on this, we'll see that we have another operator that's docked to our timer. If we get a little bit closer, we'll see that this is a set of callbacks. And callbacks are special because callbacks are Python functions that are going to run based on events from the docked operator. So for example, we have this onInitialize, onReady, onStart. These events come from our timer, and these functions down here are going to run based on that change. So when our timer chop is onReady, it will run the onReady event, and whatever code we put inside of this little function is going to be executed. So let's take a look at how we can use that. Now we could certainly use the outputs from our timer chops channels, but sometimes it's a little bit better for us to think about how we can use callbacks to do some of these operations. Let's use the tab key to open up the op create dialog, and let's head over to tops and add a text top. Now I'm going to take this text top and then I'm going to connect this to a noise top. And I'm going to make a few changes here. In my noise top, I'm going to turn off monochrome and I'm going to turn the period up to say 10 because I like this big kind of broad swath of color here. Next, I'm going to go ahead and split my view, and I'm going to change my pane over here on the right-hand side to be a text port instead. And then next, I'm going to go ahead and resize this slightly. Excellent. Now, I'd like to be able to edit the contents of this callback without being zoomed here on my network. So what I can do is I can grab this stat, I can drag it over here to my text port, and I can drop it right on where it says text port, and I can open the DAT. Now I can edit the contents of this DAT, all of these callbacks, without actually having to make my, my operator viewer active, which is going to be really helpful for me. Next, let's head over to our timer and let's turn on cycle. Let's turn off cycle limit, and then let's turn the length of this say down to about like 2 seconds. Now let's initialize and start our timer, and we should see that every 2 seconds our timer restarts, which is exactly what we want to see. So what we're going to take advantage of is we're going to start by using this on cycle callback. So every time we start a new cycle, we're going to actually use this. Every time we cross into this on cycle, we're going to go ahead and change the contents of our text one. And in fact, if we take a look at our text top, I want to change this parameter text. So I want the operator at the network path text one, and because we are here in the same portion of our network, we can use a relative path. The parameter called text is going to be equal to cycle. And we should see that that's going to update with the cycle from our timer. Now, I'd like it to be a little bit more descriptive. So let's go ahead and say, change this to be something more like the current cycle. I'm going to put that in single quotes, is with an extra space at the end. And then this value cycle is an integer. So let's go ahead and use str and enclose it in parentheses to change this integer into a string so it'll format correctly. Excellent. So now we can see that this text is showing up exactly where we want it. Let's go ahead and turn on word wrap. Perfect. And now the next thing I want to do is I want to change the seed value here on this noise when this also cycles. So let's go ahead and say the operator at the path noise 1, its parameter for seed is going to be set to cycle. And now what we should see is that in fact that seed value is going to update every time our cycle runs. Now I want to make a few other changes because I'd really love for us to show something different when we initialize our timer and when we start our timer. So let's go back to our on ready. So this is going to be when our timer is ready to start. So I want the operator that's called text1, its parameter text to be set to ready. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and here in start, I want this to say start. So what we should see is that when we're ready, the text is going to be changed to ready, and then when the timer starts, it will say start. So let's initialize this. All right, we're ready. Let's hit start. So the first time through we see start, and then we see our cycle. I would also love for these values to be reset here. So let's go ahead and see what happens if we initialize this. So our noise doesn't change until we cross into cycle, right? So our period is still at 10 here. Let's go ahead and make one other change so that we have a nice clean reset state. So noise 1, its parameter for seed is going to be set to 0. So now we should see that when we initialize our timer, that our noise top goes to a seed value of 0. And our text says ready. Let's go ahead and start this. Excellent, we're starting, and now we're cycling. This is a great way for us to think about how we can set up the conditions for what startup and what cycling looks like with a timer. And this is also the way that we might think about making sure that our state is consistent every time we run some operation. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I hope this gives you some ideas of what you can do with callbacks.